Welcome to episode 119 of Gods and Heroes of Ancient Greece. My name is MyLinda Butterworth, and today we continue with the tales of Troy and the story of Departure from Troy. Ajax of Locris dies. At Nestor's advice, all this was done, and the men shouted lustily as they loaded the ships with stores and the many spoils of war. First, the captives were put aboard, sobbing and wailing. Then the Argives themselves entered the ships. Calchas, the soothsayer, was the only one to remain ashore. His prophetic spirit had divined a terrible disaster lurking in wait for the Achaeans near the Caphirian rocks at the promontory of Euboea, where the Argive fleet had to pass on the journey home. He warned them not to sail, but no one paid any attention to his words because all hearts were overcome with longing for home. When Amphilochus, son of Amphilochus, the famed seer, whom the earth of Thebes had swallowed, drew back the foot with which he was about to board his ship, for something of his father's gift of prophecy stirred within him, and suddenly he had the same premonition as Calchas, and decided to stay behind with him. Fate had decreed that neither Calchas nor Amphilochus were to return to Greece. They settled in the cities of Cilicia and Pompeii in Asia Minor. But other Achaeans loosed the ropes which bound the ships to the shore and weighed anchor. The wind bellied out the sails, and the open sea lapped the keels. The bows of the ships were laden with the weapons of slain foes. Countless trophies of victory hung from the mast. The ships were wreathed with flowers, and the victims had garlanded their shields, their helmets, and lances. Joyful and triumphant, they poured libations of wine into the shining sea, and begged the gods for a safe return. But their prayers never reached Olympus. The winds swept them from the decks and scattered them among the drifting clouds. While the heroes were looking ahead full of hope and longing, the captive Trojan women and girls gazed back at Troy, where the smoke was still curling from the ruins. They tried to hide their sorrows, but by stifling the sobs which rose in their throats, and they eased their grief with silent tears. Some of the girls had clasped the hands around their knees, others covered their faces with their palms, the young women and children in their arms, but these thought of nothing but their mother's breasts and did not know the unhappiness in store for them. Cassandra stood among them, taller than the rest. Her eyes were tearless, and she was too proud to give way to sighs. What had happened was only what she had foretold long ago, and her fellow citizens had jeered at her for it. Now she spoke contemptuous words to her countrywomen, but through her lips mocked them. Her heart bled for her city, which had been sacked and burned. The only people left in the ruins of Troy were the old and the wounded. Antenor urged them on to the mournful task of burying their dead. It was slow work, for there were so many corpses and so few living men. These built one gigantic pyre, laid the bodies on it side by side, and lit the wood with weeping and lament. The Argives, in the meantime, had already left behind them the coast of Troy and the grave of Achilles. But their joy was tempered with grief at the thought of how many of their comrades had fallen, how many friends they were leaving in the alien earth. Coast after coast, island after island slipped past. Tenedos, Crissa, the temple of Apollo, Smithias, sacred Scylla, Lesbos, and the promontory of Lecton, where Mount Ida juts out into the sea. The wind filled the sails, and the surging sea was dark, except for the trail of white foam in the wake of the ships. The victors would have reached the coast of Hellas safely had not Pallas Athene been angry with them because of what Ajax of Locris had done. So, when they approached the stormy shores of Euboea, the goddess prepared a sad and cruel death for the son of Oileus. She had complained to Zeus that her priestess, Cassandra, had been dragged from the sanctuary of her temple, and she demanded the right to take vengeance on the perpetrator of the crime. And the father of the gods not only gave her the permission she asked, but lent his daughter thunderbolts, which the Cyclops had just forged, and let her stir up a deadly tempest for the Argive fleet. Then Athene, girt on her armor, in the midst of her shimmering Aegeus was the Gorgon's head and a tangle of serpents. She grasped one of her father's thunderbolts, which no other god except Zeus could lift, filled Olympus with the crash of thunder, poured clouds about the mountains, and wrapped the sea and the land in darkness. Then she sent Iris, her messenger, to Aeolus, god of the winds. He kept them imprisoned in a cave in a rift of earth next to his palace. Iris found the Lord of Storms at home with his wife and his 12 sons. He at once set about obeying Athene's command. With powerful hands, he thrust his huge trident into the hill which covered the cave of the winds and tore it open. And out darted the winds like hounds, eager for the hunt. He bade them unite to a single black tempest and fly to the surf which pounds the Capharian rocks on the coast of Euboea. The words had scarcely left his lips before they were on their way. The sea groaned under their impact. The waves swelled to mountains, and the courage of the Argives sank when they saw towering walls of water rolling toward them. They could no longer ply their oars. The storm had torn their sails to tatters. At last, even the helmsman gave up. Night fell, the darkest night they had ever experienced, and with it the last shred of hope vanished. Poseidon helped Pallas, his brother's daughter, and unceasingly she tossed fresh lightning and thunder down from Olympus. Screams and groans sounded through the ship. The wood cracked with the force of the gale. The timbers were wrenched apart, and those who tried to escape the impact of the wrecks driving through the waters were sucked beneath the waves. Finally, Athene hurled her mightiest thunderbolt into the ship of Ajax of Locris, and the next instant it was nothing but a mass of splinters. Earth and air rang with tremendous crash, and the waves licked at the wreckage. The crew struggled and drowned, but Ajax himself was still alive. Now he clutched a timber. Now he parted the timber with the strong strokes of an expert swimmer. Now he rode the crest of a wave. And now he was dashed into the trough. All the while, lightning blazed above him. But Athene did not want him to die just yet. Such a death would have been too merciful. Nor was his courage broken by all these terrors. He gripped an edge of rock protruding from the sea, clung to it stubbornly, and boasted he would save himself, even if all the gods combined to destroy him. Poseidon, the earthshaker who was close to Ajax, heard his vaunts with anger. Furiously, he shook earth and sea at the same time. The crags of Capharius trembled, and the shores quaked under the trident of the sea god. And then the rock which Ajax was clutching with both bleeding hands was uprooted from the bottom of the sea, and he was thrust helplessly into the swirling waters. His head and beard were white with foam as he sank. Poseidon flung at him a cliff he had pried loose from the promontory, and it covered the king of Locris, as Aetna had once covered Calchas. And so Ajax perished, shattered both by the earth and the sea. The ships of the other Danai tossed about on the waves. Some were in pieces, many had sunk. The storm raged on, and the rain poured in such torrents that it resembled the floods and the days of Pyrrha. and Deucalion. And now the Argives had also to suffer vengeance for the stoning of Palamedes. For King Nauplius, the father of this hero, was still in Euboea. When he saw the Argive fleet battling with the Tempest near the coast of his country, he thought of the malicious murder of his son, whom he had been mourning so many years. The lust for revenge had never weakened within him, and here was a chance to satisfy it. He hurried to the shore and had his servants set up burning torches all along the promontory of Caphareus, opposite the most dangerous cliffs in the sea. The Achaeans, thinking that the torches were beacons of safety put up by the compassionate inhabitants of the island, made for those very cliffs with haste and hope, and here many more of their ships were wrecked. While this was happening to the Danai on their homeward journey, Poseidon commanded the sea to tear down the walls and towers that they had put up around the camp near Troy. And so all that great undertaking, nothing was left but the ashes of Troy, and a small number of ships with returning heroes and captive Trojan women. The tempest had scattered them. It was only after terrible toil and many hardships that they reached the coast of Greece. And even there only a few found the unalloyed happiness which all had yearned for during the long years of warfare. And here is where I end the tale of Troy. But I'll be back with more tales. Many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.